time, how long do you think you were by the man that was detained on the grass? For the entire 4 minutes or for less than that?
Less than that.
And did you make any observations of the man on the grass?
While on scene, no, ma'am. Just he was just communicating with the officers. That's all I recall.
When you later watched body worn camera, did you notice things?
Yes.
What did you notice then?
Um, that it appeared that Mr. McClain vomited a couple of times, and what I heard him say was, "I can't breathe directly." But those are the observations that stick out to my mind now.
Did you see whether or not any of the officers around him did anything when the man said, "I can't breathe directly"?
I don't believe anybody addressed that when he said it.
And when you saw the man vomit, did you see any of the officers address that?
No, ma'am.
Did you see whether or not anyone allowed the man to sit up in order to vomit clearly?
I no, ma'am, I didn't see that.
At the time that the man said, "I can't breathe directly," where were the sergeants? Were they still on the street?
I believe they were.
Do you know whether or not they heard that?
I do not know.
And at the time that the man vomited, where were the sergeants?
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one?
I believe they were on the street.
Did this statement of "I can't breathe directly" and the vomit occur close in time to each other?
Mm, yes, ma'am. I was there on scene for approximately 4 minutes, so yes, ma'am.
At the time that you were there, did you know who the primary officer was?
No, ma'am.
At the time that you were there, did you know whether or not an officer had used the carotid hold?
No, ma'am.
Now, you said at some point you left the scene. Can you tell us why you left the scene?
I wasn't needed. I was only there for scene security. Didn't appear to be any other safety concerns.
Now, we're going to play your body worn camera, and that is Exhibit 192. But before I get there, I would like to show you some clips so you can identify some officers. We're first going to show you the clip, People's Exhibit 274, just to you, Officer Dunson, and see if you can identify who the people are in the picture.
Okay.
It should come up on your screen. If you could, sir, just take a few moments and look at that video clip, that still photograph, and let me know if you recognize anyone in the photograph.
Okay.
Have you had a moment to do that?
Yeah, screen just popped off though.
It does that sometimes. We'll give it a minute to see if it will pop back in. Is it back on your screen?
Yes.
Now, you've identified Mr. Woodard in the courtroom. Do you see him in this photograph?
Yes, he's the officer standing up.
And if I show you an exhibit where his name is marked, can you tell me whether or not it's correct?
Yeah.
All right. Can we show Exhibit 274 with the markings? Is this a fair and accurate representation of Mr. Woodard's name pointing to him?
Yes.
Your Honor, people would ask for omission of Exhibit 274.
Questions or objections with respect to 274? 274 will be admitted.
May we publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Dunson, that means we're just going to show the jury.
Mm.
Now, you've already described it, but as you've testified, this is Mr. Woodard standing right behind the two other officers,
Mm.
and we have his name, and it's pointed at him. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you just testified that Mr. Woodard was sort of behind the two officers, and we can't see from this photograph, but is the man on the ground right next to the two officers that you see in the forefront of this photo?
Yes.
And then Mr. Woodard is standing just on the other side of the man?
Yes.
Does this help you remember how close Mr. Woodard was to the man on the ground?
Yes.
And so how close was he?
Approximately 2 feet.
So 2 feet is about one step away?
Yes.
Do you remember whether or not Mr. Woodard was there when the man on the ground that we know as Elijah McClain was vomiting?
He may have been in the area. I don't know where he was exactly when he vomited.
Do you think that looking at your body worn camera would clear that up for you?
Yeah, possible. Yeah.
All right. How about when Mr. McClain said, "I can't breathe directly"? Do you remember whether or not Mr. Woodward was in approximate the same area?
Uh, I believe he was in the approximate same area because it occurred just shortly after I arrived.
Do you remember at some point when you were on scene whether or not Mr. Woodward was looking for something on the ground?
I don't recall.
Fair enough. And do you remember at this point whether or not Mr. Woodward sort of stepped down the grass into the sidewalk while you were on the scene?
Say that one more time, please.
Sure. So at some point you are sort of in this picture, is it fair to say from your body worn camera review that you are sort of in the same area that Mr. Woodward is?
Yeah.
Okay. When you were standing in that area, was Mr. Woodward standing next to you, or at some point did he sort of take a few steps towards the sidewalk?
I believe he walked down towards the sidewalk.
And then do you remember whether or not a few moments later he came back towards you?
I don't recall his actions, ma'am.
I'm going to show you another still. People's 275. It will once again come up on your screen. And this is from your body worn camera.
Okay.
If we could take this down, please. And just show Mr. Dunson, Officer Dunson, 275. And for the record, I've shown counsel. So Officer Dunson, do you notice whether or not in that clip from your body worn camera that Mr. Woodard is still on the grass?
I believe he's just, I guess, 2 people from the left of the screen.
And in this shot, has he removed something from his head?
I don't see glasses on his face.
If we could just show you again, 274. Do you notice whether or not he's wearing something,
Oh, his hat.
his hat? If we could show you now, 275. Does he still have his hat on?
No.
And if you look at those timestamps, if you could go back to 274. What does a timestamp have on your camera?
22:48, so 10:48 p.m.
And then if you look at 275, what is the timestamp now?
22:50, so 10:50 p.m.
So if my math is correct, approximately, oh, a minute and a half has gone by from 22:48:33 to 22:50:05.
Yes.
Not quite 2 minutes, a little less.
Yes.
And is People's 275 accurate as far as labeling Mr. Woodard? Oh, we will label it. If we could show him that label, please. Now, Officer Johnson, is People's 275 accurate as far as who Mr. Woodard is in this frame shot?
Yes.
People would ask for admission of 275.
Questions or objections? 275 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May people publish?
You may.
Officer Dutton, we're going to show the jury 275. So this is about a minute and a half later, and we see that Mr. Woodard has removed his hat. And we've labeled it so that the jury knows who that is in the frame. Do you know, off chance, who is the officer all the way to the left of the frame?
I don't.
Fair enough. And do we see the two officers that were kneeling down on the grass by, well, who we now know is Mr. McClain?
Yes.
So can you tell from this photograph how close Mr. Woodard is to those two officers and Mr. McClain?
Approximately a foot.
So less than a step almost?
Correct.
Thank you. So I'd like to play your body worn camera, and I'm going to stop it at certain portions.
Okay.
We'll play exhibit 192. And just so you know, Officer Dunson, we have not included the call that you were on beforehand. We started at the time that you hear something on dispatch.
Mm.
Breaker team, please. Yes, clear the air, 312, talk it up. What do you know? The fire starts. 13 copy fire started and.
So can you just tell the jury what's going on here since it's a little dark in the body worn camera?
I'm leaving an apartment complex and running down the stairs, responding to the call to assistant officer.
And it looks like your camera's probably bouncing because you're running.
Yes,
That's just what happens. It's not solid to your body, correct?
correct.
And if I heard correctly, I heard something about fire.
Mm.
What does that mean to you as an officer?
That fires, somebody's requesting fire or rescue to respond.
And can you tell from the clip what time it is now?
22:45, so 10:45 p.m.
Thank you. Please continue.
Everyone down in place. Just no fire. Oh, 312. Scissor 26 out with 312 at 22:46. Change. Change. He's still putting this in the ground. Copy. Party is detained, but finding you on the ground at 22:40.
So we hear some dispatch going on,
Mhm.
and is that how it really sounds in real life?
Yes,
And it talks about that you have someone detained, is that correct?
somebody has somebody detained, correct?
And typically that means that someone has been handcuffed.
Yes.
Thank you. Please continue.
Can we see anything? They're not here. You can slow it down a little bit.
So I just heard let's slow it down a little bit. What does that mean for you?
That you can slow down, but you're not called off yet.
And typically when that happens, what does slow down? Like, what do you know is happening?
The situation's becoming increasingly more contained, whatever the situation may be.
So there's not much security risk at this moment,
Objection, Judge.
if you know.
Speculation.
Sustained.
Approximately what time is it now per your body worn camera?
22:47, so 10:47 p.m.
Thank you.
I'm seeing it going fast, they can slow down, put both parties intended at 22:47. Yeah, if it's like a peaceful little bit down, we'll tell it. Copy, everyone slow down, go into Billings and pull back at 22:47.
Does it mean anything that they keep telling you all to slow down? The fact that they're repeating it, does that have any significance for you as an officer?
No, it just means slow down. Some people may not have heard it.
Thank you. So Officer Dunson, it's still a little blurry now, but when you first got out of your car, how many patrol vehicles do you think were on scene already?
5 or 6, I don't know.
And as you are walking towards the scene, I'm going to ask you to see if you can identify who's walking next to you or who you see. So I'll give you a few moments to watch and then we'll stop it. Please continue.
You know where the.
Officer Dunson, could you identify the officers that just walked by you?
The second one was James Root, and I believe the first person was Officer Alicia Ward, but I can't tell for certain.
Sir? Okay, please continue. Once again, I know it's a little blurry now, but you know who these individuals are?
Sergeant Nunez and Sergeant Leonard.
So when you were talking about their location, does the body worn camera sort of line up with what you remember them being?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I believe they were in the street, so.
Please continue. When you first came onto the scene and you're approaching the officers, we hear Mr. McClain say something. Did you hear that?
I did not.
Please back it up just a little bit, please. Officer Dunton, did you hear Mr. McClain say something?
He said something, I couldn't tell what it was, ma'am.
Please continue.
Y'all need help or anything?
You have any wipes?
White?
Do you know at the time why the officer was asking for wipes?
I don't.
Please continue.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You have a good grip on it?
He went like this, dude.
And now that we're actually playing the video, does the screenshot we showed earlier sort of depict the scene?
Yes.
And is it still Mr. Woodard that's behind or right, sort of, it goes the officers, Mr. McClain on the ground and Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Please continue.
No, I'm good. Good going.
While Mr. Woodard is on scene, do you hear Mr. McClain making any statements
That it hurts?
that it hurts? Do you see the officers do anything that would cause Mr. McClain to make that statement?
I didn't see them do anything.
Can a restraint hold cause pain to people who are being detained?
Objection, Judge. Speculation.
Based on your experience.
I'll allow it.
Can you say the question again, please, ma'am?
Certainly. Based on your experience, can a restraint hold cause pain to the people who are being retained?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
from 2 academies being placed in handcuffs and being used as a practice dummy for arrest control techniques.
So as a practice dummy, have you had practice control techniques done on you?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell the jury a little bit about what does it feel like?
Depends on the restraint or the hold. It may impact your wrist, depending on the size. Like I have bigger wrists, so the handcuffs hurt my wrist. Joints may hurt, things of that nature.
It's not a comfortable position to be in.
No, it's not.
Please continue. Do you see, as the body worn camera continues to play, whether or not Mr. Woodard is still there?
Yeah, he's still in the area.
But is he where he was as far as standing right next to Mr. McClain?
I believe he was on the right side of the screen, just I couldn't tell because the camera moved. As
So
I'm
he
looking
might be
around.
there, but your camera's just not picking him up.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah,
continue.
like right here. dude.
Up here? Right here, the pair of glasses. All right. Cubs, here's glasses and a phone rope.
So, Mr. Dunson, I'm assuming that's your voice that we hear now.
Yes,
And you just indicated that you saw a pair of glasses and a phone.
yes.
So can you tell how far away were you from the building when you saw the glasses and the phone?
2.5 feet, maybe.
Not very far away, a step away from the building?
No, ma'am, not far away.
Okay, can we play?
We're here.
More body cameras. This isn't that movie guy, is it? We go.
I don't know.
Like,
Stop.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear Mr. McClain make some sort of sound there?
yes.
And how would you describe that sound?
I couldn't describe that sound, ma'am. Just like something was just being forced out of him, I guess.
Just something being forced out of him?
Yeah,
An explanation of some sort of pain, perhaps?
perhaps.
At the time, is anyone responding to Mr. McClain about this?
Not that I can tell, no, ma'am.
Is it common that if a detainee expresses pain or says the handcuffs are hurting me, that officers will adjust them?
Objection, Judge, as to what's common.
Response.
I think based on Mr. Dunson's experience and training, he can tell what the typical protocol was when this happens on a scene.
I'll sustain the objection.
Please go forward.
You can't breathe directly because.
Now, did we just hear the statement that you've already talked about? I can't breathe directly.
Correct.
And do you know, did Mr. McClain, if you know, did Mr. McClain say that to anyone's question or did he volunteer that?
Couldn't tell you.
Maybe play. It's hard to see what's going on the ground because of the angle of your camera, but do you remember if any of the officers addressed Mr. McClain when he said, I can't breathe directly?
I don't believe so.
And then after he made that statement, we just heard a sound. Is that the same sound that you were having a hard time describing?
Correct.
Some sort of expression of pain?
Correct.
312, your 7. Okay,
We have the gun.
No, he went for his gun.
Oh,
Oh.
That's normal traffic, 49.
26 feet by right here, right here, we have to get them in here, we need that transport.
That's for the, there,
Tell them coming up.
Oh, this is coming up.
Now, Mr. Dunson, Officer Dunson, I had shown you the screenshot where Mr. Woodard had taken off his hat
Yes.
and you identified him.
Yes.
Do you see him back into your camera view?
I believe that's him, the second person from the left.
And is he holding something in his hand?
A flashlight?
Correct. So is that the same sort of moment as we showed you on that clip of the screen? The
I
still?
believe so.
Thanks. You can bend his knees a little bit.
Did you hear Mr. McClain just make another sound?
Yes,
Did you know whether or not that was connected to any type of vomiting he may have been doing?
I believe it may have been vomiting. I don't know for certain, ma'am.
Did you see him vomit at the scene?
No, ma'am. I just recall hearing the sound. That's again based off watching this body cam footage for the second time now.
We can down.
So, with a red case, y'all missing your cell phone or
I'm
anything?
not missing mine. You missing yours? Missing the car, right? What's that? Your cell phone is in the car?
I think so. Is it an iPhone?
Is with a red case?
No.
Okay.
Did you know at the time that you were at the scene whose cell phone that was?
No, ma'am.
Was that ever identified to you that that may have been Mr. McClain's cell phone?
I don't recall that. No, ma'am.
So we now see Sergeant Nunez has come up in the screen.
Judge testifying.
Sustain.
You had identified Sergeant Nunez earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize that person walking towards Officer Green as that sergeant?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that's Sergeant Nunez.
And would it be helpful if we backed up a few seconds so you could see it move?
Yes, ma'am.
If we could do that, please.
No.
Okay.
Officer Johnson, have you had a chance to see whether or not you think that is Sergeant Nunez?
Yes.
And is she your sergeant too, or was she at one point?
She was a graveyard sergeant
Did you work directly with her?
a few times. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah, just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Officer Dunson, I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's 276, just to you. This is another clip of the video that we're just now seeing. Would you just take a moment and look at it? And tell me whether or not you can identify the man walking towards what you have said is Sergeant Nunez and Sergeant Nunez in this clip.
Who do you want me to identify?
Sure. So you see the main officer in front, and then you see an officer walking towards what you've identified as Sergeant Nunez. Do you know who the officer is who's walking towards Sergeant Nunez?
From the back, no. No, I mean, if I had to guess just based on body cam footage,
You're not allowed to guess.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
A few minutes earlier, you testified that Mr. Woodard had removed his hat.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with Mr. Woodyard walking towards Sergeant Nunez?
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you, if you can't say it is, you can't say it is.
Yeah, it's consistent with it.
Do you think that this clip is a fair and accurate still of this video of Mr. Woodard walking towards Sergeant Nunez?
I don't know, ma'am. I just
That's fair. If you can't say, you can't say. All right. If you could continue playing. Judge, could you check and see if the screen is up?
I thought you were just showing it to him.
Sorry, we're done.
No.
okay.
Good, Bill.
You're not in trouble if you're worried about that.
You need to know what you're taking. It's right there, I'll go.
315, you got it? 315, I'm with 312 right now.
Huh? That plastic bag involved?
Okay, copy, 2250.
216 and 214, what's this guy description?
Pull it over here. Recording, shut it off. Split that.
Only with TJ shorts with
Something
white
fell off
stripes,
right there.
green curly shirt, white Raiders hat.
Got throw up, dude?
Yeah.
Throw up right?
Officer Dunson, in that part of the clip, did you hear one of the officers speaking to the man on the ground saying, do you have to throw up, dude?
Yes.
Does that sort of comport with your memory that the man on the ground, Mr. McClain, continued to be sick?
Yes.
They're okay? Don't throw up on me, no.
You got fire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I call
They
it-
were down there.
You were not directly on this phone and this one was this connected service.
Hey, dude, relax. Get it out, dude.
614.
We just heard a sound. Did that come from Mr. McClain?
I believe so.
And is that the sound that you believe is vomiting?
Yes.
216, he's about 5'4", 140.
Did, you see him, like, eat anything?
No, we got called.
I don't,
All right.
do y'all need the cell phone picked up?
Probably just bring it over by him, dude. And then, we contacted.
Good, I have,
He's wearing a ski mask.
SQRP and we got the.
We started kind of like moving away from us, so.
I would just leave it with them if they don't need us.
He came up against the wall right here, so he reached for Rosie's gun.
Yeah.
So
315's the Truckee Way and Utah
Just
Place.
contact her and get all.
Utah Place and Truckee Way. Or
So
your-
all he said is the same thing that's in the notes that he
said
saw a guy,
they
in
stop
a
and
mask.
sure
He was put into a product, he did
then
lose
there sounded
consciousness.
like
Approximately what time is it now per your body worn camera, Officer Dunson?
2252.
And we just see someone appears on the screen that's coming to the scene. Who was that personnel?
Aurora Fire.
And do you remember now approximately how many Aurora Fire personnel came to the scene?
I counted 3 in this clip.
And did you have any interaction with Aurora Fire?
I don't recall that.
Do you leave soon after they come to the scene?
I believe so.
We'll watch to the end of your clip. That's it. And just so it's clear for the jury, the image that we see right now on the screen, the still, does Aurora Fire have a certain distinct uniform?
Yes.
Could you describe to the jury what it is?
For medical calls, they typically arrive in T-shirts, in their uniform pants, which are, I believe, maybe fire resistant, heavy duty with the highlights at the bottom of the ankles.
So in future body worn cameras, if the jury sees an individual with the pants and the highlights, they know this is fire, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they may be wearing something different, but typically that's been my professional experience.
Okay, and then how does that differ from your uniform as a Aurora Police Department officer?
We wear our body armor. Some officers wear exterior carriers. We wear a badge, actual metal badge, along with our duty belts and carry guns, tasers.
And you don't have that strip at the bottom of the pants.
No,
Before you walk off scene, did you hear Officer Woodard address the fact that the man on the ground, Mr. Elijah McClain, has been vomiting?
I don't recall hearing that. I wasn't listening for it, so.
That's fine. And do you remember whether or not Mr. Woodard addressed whether the fact that Mr. McClain was saying, "I can't breathe" directly?
We have some clarification. Is she talking about here, since it's not there, or earlier, or later?
Well, at the time, I can clarify that, Your Honor.
Okay, please do.
At the time of the statement, when Mr. McClain said, "I can't breathe directly," was Mr. Woodard on scene?
Yes,
Did you see him do anything to address that statement?
I did not.
At the time that you left the scene, was Mr. McClain still on the ground and still handcuffed?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time, was he still sort of slightly moving as you described earlier?
I believe so.
He wasn't actively resisting, in your opinion?
No, ma'am.
During the time that you were there, did you see Mr. Woodard do anything to check on Mr. McClain's medical condition, like bend down and see if he was okay?
No, ma'am.
Did you see Mr. Woodard make sure that Mr. McClain was coherent in any way?
No, ma'am.
After you left the scene, did you go about your duties that night?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point, were you asked to respond to the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
And approximately what time was that?
I don't recall.
When you got to the hospital, what were your instructions?
Um, if I remember correctly, they remain on scene for scene security and possibly attempt to identify who he was.
And what hospital did you go to?
Uh, University on Colfax.
And how far away is the University Hospital on Colfax from this scene approximately?
3-minute drive, I would guess.
Now, at the time that you were at the hospital, did you collect any of Mr. McClain's personal effects from another officer
From another officer.
or CSI?
I collected clothing and turned it over to CSI technician
Thank you for the correction. And where did you get the clothing?
from the emergency room because he was in the emergency room.
And to make sure we all understand whose clothing it is, who did the clothing belong to?
Mr. McClain.
And how is it that the ER personnel gave you the clothing? Was it individually or was it in a bag or how did that happen?
I don't recall how that happened.
Is it fairly typical that ER personnel will give you the personal effects of a person that's being detained?
If they have to cut the clothing off, yes, or I may just grab it while they're doing their whatever medical procedures that they're doing.
Did you know at the time whether or not ER personnel had to cut off Mr. McClain's clothing?
I don't recall.
Did you actually ever look at the clothing?
I believe I did.
And once you looked at it, did you keep it in your custody before you turned it over to Miss Amir?
No, I kept it in my custody, so yes, and then I turned it over to the CSI technician.
And is that typical protocol?
When CSI shows up, yes.
You also mentioned that you were there to identify the man. Did you recognize that the man in the ER was the same man that had been detained at Billings and Evergreen?
What do you mean, ma'am?
Sure. So did you make the connection that the scene that you were at earlier with the man on the ground being detained by the officers
Uh,
and the man now at the hospital was one and the same person?
I had that knowledge prior to because my sergeant instructed me to go there related to the initial contact.
And when you went to the ER room, how did the man appear now?
He was non-responsive.
And what does that mean for you?
For me, the medical procedures that the medical staff was attempting to do and utilize, he wasn't responding to it. He wasn't speaking in any way or communicating.
Based on your experience at the scene with this man and now your experience at the hospital, would you say that there was a marked difference in him?
Yes, ma'am.
And why would you say that?
When I left the scene, he was communicating with the officers.
And then how was he now?
He wasn't communicating at all.
Did you make any observations that there was any type of red fluid or stuff around his face or body?
Yes, there was blood on his face and body.
And did you notice whether or not there was vomit?
I believe some of it was vomit.
Was that consistent with what you saw him doing at the scene?
The vomiting piece?
Yes, sir.
I believe so, yes.
Were you tasked with trying to identify the man at the hospital?
Uh, yeah, I was trying to help identify him, yes, ma'am.
So if a person at a scene tells officers his name, would you have, is that typical that you would be there to identify him?
Objection, Judge, speculation.
Sustain.
In what situations do you have to identify a detainee?
One, we can't positively identify who they are.
When you're given a person's name, do you use that in order to try to identify them?
E,
Relevance to this incident.
Sustain.
Did you know the person's name when you got to the hospital?
no, ma'am.
Were you able to identify the man at that time?
No, ma'am.
Did another sergeant attempt to take fingerprints of him?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know whether or not that investigation recovered any identification for the man at the hospital?
I don't believe it did.
And was that Sergeant Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
While you were at the hospital, did the man in the ER being treated, did he ever regain consciousness?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Officer Dunson, I have no other questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, sir. Sir, when you left the scene, the man on the ground, Mr. McClain, was communicating with officers.
Yes,
He was speaking to them.
yes,
And when you arrived later in the hospital, that's when you noticed the marked difference.
correct,
You didn't notice that while he was on scene.
correct.
Now, Officer Dunson, you were asked a lot of questions about a 4-minute interaction you had about 4 years ago, right?
Yes,
And this isn't the first time you've had to answer questions about this.
correct.
How many times have you had to testify about your 4-minute interaction?
This is the third time.
Just going towards his memory, Judge.
Well,
Oh, sorry. I'm just going towards his memory.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. Sorry, do you remember the question?
This is the third time being questioned about this.
And how many times have you been shown your body cam or reviewed your body cam?
This is my second time reviewing the body cam footage for the contact on Billings that I recall.
Right. I guess I should have clarified. Thank you for that. You have 2 different body cams, right? One at the hospital, one at the Billings and Colfax.
Correct,
And so this would be the second time in 4 years that you've reviewed the body cam footage from your 4-minute interaction 4 years ago.
correct,
Fair to say that your memory is a little bit hazy from what happened that 4-minute interaction 4 years ago?
correct.
Fair to say you've had other contacts since then in those 4 years?
Yes,
We've heard, Officer Dunson, that when you arrived on scene on Billings and Colfax, there are already other officers present. And you had estimated, is that a yes? I'm sorry.
yeah,
And you had estimated about 10 officers on scene. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. We had saw it on your body cam that when you arrived, we saw Mr. Woodyard looking for something on the ground next to Mr. McClain. Is that fair?
say that one more time.
Sure. We had saw it on your body cam that when you first arrived on scene to where Mr. McClain was, Mr. Woodyard was standing up
Yes, he was standing up.
and he was walking around like he was searching something nearby. Is that fair?
Yeah,
There's two officers on Mr. Woodyard, or excuse me, on Mr. McClain. Mr. Woodyard was not one of them.
correct.
And in order to get to where Mr. Woodyard was, you had to pass two sergeants.
Yes,
You mentioned already that those two sergeants, they weren't on the grass next to Mr. McClain, but they're about a couple steps away. Is that fair?
yes,
Those sergeants, Sergeant Leonard and Sergeant Nunez.
yes.
Do you know Sergeant Nunez is Mr. Woodyard's direct supervisor?
I believe she was at the time.
And I can't remember. I think you were asked this question. I apologize. Do you know Mr. Woodyard?
Just professionally.
Your Honor, we have the screen. I'm not going to play you the entire clip. It sounded to me that there might have been some audio issues. Do you recall your body cam cutting in and out in terms of audio?
Yeah, I mean, I heard it watching it this time.
This time, the other time you had watched it, did your audio cut in and out?
I don't recall it doing that.
So it might just be an audio glitch today, is what I'm trying to get at.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you had been asked questions about Mr. McClain, Mr. McClain's statements to law enforcement. We heard him did you hear him interacting with law enforcement when you first arrived on scene?
Yes.
You had been asked questions about, did you hear this sound, that sound? How many times do you recall hearing Mr. McClain vomiting?
Approximately 2 times, maybe more.
Now, I want to play you, if we can go to, this would be exhibit 192. This is your body camera. If we can go to 224821. Go ahead and play, please.
Oh, fuck that. We're doing fine.
Y'all need help or
You
anything?
guys have any wipes?
Wipes?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You have a good grip on it?
He went like this, dude.
Now that noise there, did that sound like noise of distress or pain?
Distress and pain.
Did that sound like noise of vomiting?
That portion, no.
Okay, did you see him vomit at that point?
No.
Did any of the officers that were on top of or right next to Mr. McClain make a movement like he had vomited?
No.
Now, you had also been asked and shown this clip where Mr. Woodyard appears to walk off. I want to play that clip for you, and I want you to pay attention to the direction that Mr. Woodyard's heading.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good. Good going. Oh, that hurts.
Does it appear to you that he's heading towards the direction of where the sergeants were? Just asking in terms of direction. I'm not saying that he stopped or anything.
If the witness can answer, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he's walking down towards the street, so
And to your knowledge, do you know whether he stopped or continued walking?
I don't know.
Can we continue playing, please?
I'm still on my bike.
Do you see him in this frame here? This is for the record, 224902.
I believe he's the person standing up. I can't tell because it's blurry. so-
Yeah, it's a little blurry. Maybe perhaps we can rewind it a little bit, and then I'll have you play, I'll play it for you again. You can tell me if that's him or if that's someone else. Go ahead.
Okay.
Like right here, dude.
Were you able to tell there?
I
That's
wasn't
pretty
able-
fast.
Yeah, I wasn't
Okay.
able to tell.
Let's keep it playing. We'll be able to get a different angle.
Up here? Right here, in a pair of glasses? All right. Cuz, there's glasses and a phone, right?
See him yet?
I believe he's talking to the sergeants on the grass, concrete area.
And are you confident that's him or if that's someone else?
I'm not confident. It's just,
I'm gonna back it up a couple seconds and I'll play it for you more, okay?
all right. Cuz, there's glasses and a phone right over here. Right here.
This isn't that movie guy, is it?
Who's making that statement about, this isn't that, sounds like Lulu, or I guess, making a statement about questioning whether this is that guy or not? Do you know who that is?
I do not.
Okay. Are you familiar with Sergeant Leonard? Do you hear his voice? Do you recognize his voice?
I wasn't listening for his voice, sir.
Oh, no problem. Would it be helpful if I backed it up and you could identify whether that's Sergeant Leonard?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, this isn't that movie guy, is it? We go.
I don't know.
Do you see Mr. Woodyard? Oh, I guess first off, let me ask you, do you recognize whether that's Sergeant Leonard asking that question or not?
Yeah, I believe that's Sergeant Leonard's voice.
And did you see Officer Woodyard at all?
I believe he was over there standing speaking with Sergeant Nunez.
Okay. Could that have been Officer Jordan Mullins?
Possibly, sir.
Could that have been Officer Alicia Ward?
Possibly, sir.
Okay. So we're just, my point being is you're not quite sure.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead and play it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, was he trying to do that? Yeah, breathe directly.
All right. So if we back it up a few seconds, please. All right. Okay, play it a little bit more and then I'll have you pause it.
Yeah, breathe directly, because
All right, so we see one predominant male. You see one individual here. That's not Officer Woodyard. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's correct.
Okay. And I'm gonna back this up a bit more because I understand it's a bit blurry. I'm gonna ask you if this is a female officer, if this is a female officer, and this is a female officer here. Okay?
Okay.
Let me go ahead and back it up. Go ahead and put.
oh, was he trying to do that? Yeah, breathe directly, because
Up. Do you see the long hair?
Yes.
Okay. Does Officer Woodyard have long hair?
No.
Okay. You had mentioned that there's one individual when you had passed a Sergeant Leonard, correct? Is that Sergeant Leonard?
Yes.
Okay. You had also mentioned that Sergeant Leonard had been next to Sergeant Nunez when you walked past. Is that Sergeant Nunez?
I can't tell.
Oh, fair enough. You know that Officer Jordan Mullins was also on scene?
Yes.
Okay, and you also know that Officer Alicia Ward was on scene?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Go ahead and play it.
Three, 12-7.
So this is a few seconds after Mr. McClain you had said that he had made the statement, "I can't breathe," directly.
Yes.
Can you identify which one is Officer Woodyard?
No.
Okay. Fair to say you don't know where he went.
No, I don't.
Okay. Could possibly gone further and you don't know.
Correct.
Okay. And so when you're saying that he's on scene, he's not nearby Mr. Woodyard. Is that fair? Or excuse me, Mr. McClain. Is that fair?
Yeah.
In this body cam, from what we can tell, he's not next to Mr. McClain that you can tell.
Correct.
During your time on scene, did you see anyone with a higher rank than those two sergeants?
Not that I recall.
Sergeant's a higher rank than an officer.
Correct.
An officer has to obey the instructions of a sergeant.
That's not always the case.
You're allowed to disobey a sergeant.
If the order that the sergeant is given is against the law or may put officers in the officer safety or a person detained in safety safety concern situation, then no.
Sure. You had mentioned that you had gone to the hospital later under the instructions, correct?
Correct.
Instructions of your sergeant.
Correct.
Did you feel comfortable to tell your sergeant no?
Say that one more time.
Sure. My point being is you went to the hospital because the sergeant told you to go to the
Yeah.
hospital, right? Okay. I'm sorry, I trailed off. My point being is that you went to the hospital because the sergeant told you to go to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
Now, earlier when we had seen Mr. Woodyard walk towards the direction of those two sergeants, did you hear either sergeant scold Mr. Woodyard?
No, sir.
Did you hear them say anything to the effect of, get back over there, you're not allowed to walk away?
No, sir.
You're aware that a sergeant's a higher rank than Officer Woodyard?
Correct.
During your entire time that you've been present on the scene, estimated 4 minutes, you never heard Sergeant Leonard nor Sergeant Nunez correct any of Mr. Woodyard's actions
Correct.
or scold him for doing anything wrong.
Correct.
We also don't see Mr. Woodyard leaving this time until there are other officers present.
Correct.
Said a different way, he never left Mr. McClain's side until there were, I think you had said 6 here plus 2 there, including yourself, so 9 officers present next to Mr. McClain, correct?
Correct.
These extra officers are in a position to assist if needed. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
That's the point of having extra officers present, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, when you had shown up, we had seen you or heard you say, you asked those 2 officers sitting next to Mr. McClain whether they needed help with anything.
Yes, sir.
And that was before Mr. Woodyard left.
Yes, sir.
Many of these officers, including yourself, were close enough to observe Mr. McClain. I could rephrase.
I'll sustain the objection and allow counsel to rephrase.
Appreciate it, Judge. You're close enough where we can hear audio from Mr. McClain, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we can see that there's other officers right next to you.
Yes, sir.
Close enough for you to touch them.
Yes, sir.
Before leaving, before Mr. Woodyard left Mr. McClain, Mr. McClain was on his side, correct?
Yes, sir. That's what I recall.
Now, I want to clarify something. You had said today that Mr. McClain was up on his side/stomach.
Yes.
You had previously mentioned, or you had previously testified, correct?
Yes.
And you had said that he had been lying on his side. Is there a difference is my question following up.
No, sir. I mean, it's just side/stomach. It's just-
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not trying to trip you up. I'm trying to understand the sort of the positioning here. He's not on the prone position. Is that fair?
No, he's not.
Prone position would be flat on his stomach.
No, I didn't see him flat on the stomach.
Is this more of the recovery position?
It wouldn't be recovery. It'd be all the way over to the side, but no. It's that side/stomach's the best way I can describe it.
And we saw at least one sergeant come over and interact with the 2 officers on top of Mr. McClain, correct? Okay. Now, before Mr. Woodyard left Mr. McClain here, Mr. McClain was speaking.
Yes.
Up until this point, did you hear where Mr. Woodyard left? Or I guess right before Mr. Woodyard left, did you hear Mr. McClain complain about anything about not being able to breathe?
I know at one point he said I can't breathe directly.
directly. And do you know whether that was before or after Mr. Woodyard left?
I don't recall.
Sure. Do you mind if we back this up? Go ahead and back it up to, right, whoop, not that far. Okay, stop right there. Go ahead and play it.
It's good now.
Y'all need help or anything?
Give me wipes.
Wipes?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You have a good grip on it?
He went like this, dude.
No, I'm good. Good going.
Have you heard anything up until this point about Mr. McClain saying he can't breathe?
Not to this point, no, not at this point.
And this is when we see Mr. Woodyard walk away.
Yeah,
And as you mentioned, I'm assuming, is it fair to say that you didn't have your eyes on Mr. Woodyard the entire time?
no, I didn't.
Okay, so you don't know how far away he walked away.
I don't.
Okay, you don't know if he walked far away where he can't hear anything.
Yeah, I don't know where he went to, sir.
Go ahead and continue playing.
I'm still on my bike.
Wait like this.
Okay.
Like right here. dude.
Up here? Right here, in a pair of glasses? All right. Cuz, there's glasses and a phone right over here. Right here.
This isn't that movie guy, is it?
I don't know.
Like,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, was he trying to do that? You can't breathe correctly because.
Okay. Is that the first time you've heard Mr. McClain from your body cam saying that he can't breathe or he can't breathe correctly?
I heard I can't breathe directly, but yeah, that's
Correct.
the first time that I recall it.
Okay. And was that in response to one of the officers? I guess, do you recognize Officer Redema?
I mean, now after these trials, yeah,
Okay.
I guess.
Was that in response to Officer Redema saying stop?
I don't know.
Okay.
What-
I guess my question is, did you hear Officer Redema say stop and then Mr. McClain say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I can't breathe directly.
Somebody did say stop. I don't know who it was, but I did hear Mr. McClain make those statements.
Okay. So he's communicating with the officers.
He's
my point.
communicating with the officers.
Okay. And it seems to track with what the officers are saying to him. Is that fair?
I guess so, sir.
My point being is they say stop and he's trying to explain his actions.
Okay.
He's not talking about aliens or spaceships or something that just wouldn't make sense.
No, it appears they are communicating with each other.
Did you notice any signs of Mr. McClain not being able to breathe right there?
I did not.
Before Mr. Woodyard left, we heard the two officers talking to each other. And Officer Redema had moved and gestured and said he went for your gun or he went like this. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember him reaching towards Officer Rosenblatt's right side of his body
Yes.
and kind of touching his gun?
Yeah, based on the video, yes, sir.
Okay. And so can we reasonably assume then, or are you able to say that Officer Rosenblatt was carrying his gun on the right side of his body?
Sustain.
Just to clarify, you saw Officer Redema reach towards the right side of Mr. Rosenblatt's body, correct?
Yes.
And just to clarify, you just said that you saw him then touch Mr. Redema's gun, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
All right, I'll allow it if that's what you saw.
Thank you. Just to clarify, that's what you saw, right?
Yes.
believe it was Mr. Rosenblatt that asked, did he have a good grip on it? And Mr. Rodemer responded, he went like this, dude. Does that sound right?
And I'm going to remind the jurors that the statements that are on the video are for the jury to determine, not the attorneys.
Fair enough. Making something similar to those that they can discern from themselves, but I just want to orient you in terms of that time. Do you recall that?
I do recall after watching the body cam video, there's a conversation between two officers who were with Mr. McClain about reaching for a gun and the demonstration of grabbing for a gun.
Perfect. And so it's after that comment that's when he moved towards Mr. Rosenblatt's right side and touched his gun.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. When we had been playing this video, we had seen Mr. Woodyard return. Can we go to the frame at 22:50:08? My question to you is, do you know where Mr. Woodyard came back from?
I do not.
Okay. We had saw at the pause that he had left around 22:48:55, so 10:48:55. Is that fair?
Okay.
All right. I want you to pay attention to the hood of this car right here. If we could back it up a few more seconds, please. All right. If you could pay attention to the hood of that car and tell me if you, excuse me, right there. Tell me if you see an individual over there. Do you see someone right here?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and play it, please.
Thanks.
You can bend his knees a little bit. So he can balance himself.
Is that his cell phone over there?
He's kicking around.
So, with a red case? Y'all missing your cell phone or
I'm
anything?
not missing mine, you're missing the car, right? Your cell phone.
What's that?
Your cell phone is in the car.
I think so. Is it an iPhone?
Is with a red case?
No.
Okay.
We need to know.
Back,
Good,
I'm
Bill.
sorry. That was my fault. Go to 22:50:00. Okay. I want you to, right, 49:99. Keep going back. Okay. I want you to pay attention to this area here and go
Which
ahead.
area?
Oh.
Normal traffic, 49. 26 feet by right here, right here, we get them in here, we need to step out.
Did you see someone come from that hood?
I asked which area.
Oh, sorry. That's my fault. I keep telling you to look at different areas. Okay. So keep looking at this area here, okay?
All right.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Normal traffic, 49. 26 feet by right here, right here, we
All right, stop.
get them in.
Did you see someone walk past that hood from
Yes.
behind it? Okay. I want you, we're going to back it up a few seconds. I want you to see if you can track that individual until you can see Mr. Woodyard come up to the scene, okay? Go ahead.
He's going.
Oh.
Normal traffic, 49. 26 feet by right here, right here, we get them in here, we need to transport. That's part of there enough.
Tell them to come in.
Is that Officer Woodyard right there?
Yes.
Did it appear to you that he came from behind the vehicle over there?
Well, and also it's really becoming an over narration of what the jury can determine from watching the video if their attention is drawn to it. So sustain.
Okay. Let me ask you, this road here, is this 225?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with this area?
Yes, sir.
Is that a 6-lane highway?
Yes, sir.
We hear some background noise in your body cam. Is that the traffic from 225?
Yes, sir.
Does 225 get fairly loud?
Yes, sir.
In terms of you actually being on the scene and what you can hear, is it sometimes the traffic is louder than what we're hearing on your body cam?
Yes, sir.
If you get closer to 225, does the sound get louder?
Unless Mr. Woodard, Mr. Dutton over to the 225 wall.
I can rephrase.
All right, sustain.
When you walk closer to when you personally walk closer to 225, have you noticed whether it gets louder or not?
There's no foundation, sustain.
Have you ever walked towards 225?
Yes.
When you walk closer to 225, does the noise get louder?
Sustained, it has to be, we have some context to it. There's 225 is kind of a long road.
Fair enough. In this area here, have you walked closer to 225?
Yes.
When you walk closer to 225 in this area here, does the traffic get louder?
Another day's perhaps, but we're talking about this evening, but on this show.
Sustain.
Okay. On this evening, did you walk from this area to any area closer to 225?
No, sir.
Okay. Can we back this up to 2249, about 38, please? All right, go ahead and play it.
31207. Okay,
We have the gun going?
No, he went for his gun.
Oh.
326, be a fire right, here, right there, we get it.
This individual here, is he talking into his radio?
Yes, sir.
Okay. From what you heard, does it sound like Cruiser 26, we have fire right? We need to get him here and get transport? I'm asking if that's what he heard.
If he can testify to it, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
I heard him ask and confirm whether or not fire was responding. I don't know if he was saying anything about transport.
Sure. Can we back it up to 224943 and play it again, please?
Okay,
We have the gun going?
No, he went for his gun.
Oh.
326, be a fire right, here, right there, we get them in here, we need that transport.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Cruiser 26, does that signal supervisor or sergeant?
That's his call sign. So yeah, Cruiser's a sergeant.
Okay. We have fire. Does fire indicate, we have fire right? He's asked, I guess, did you hear him say anything along the lines of, we have fire right?
Jack's starting to get through to, even over the stage, we notice at least 5, 6.
All right, in the court will remind counsel of People v. Vergari at 521 Pacific 3rd, 391.
Understood. My question to you is in terms of the question of we have fire. Does fire mean medical to you?
Yes.
Thank you. Aurora Fire and Rescue are the medical assistance that you, the police, use, correct?
Correct.
And Aurora Fire and Rescue includes paramedics, correct?
I believe so.
We heard in the beginning of this video, I'm not going to play it unless you can't remember it, dispatch saying, get fire started. I believe you're asked a couple questions about that in direct. Do you remember that? When get fire started that means to have medical ready, correct?
Yes, that respond to that area.
And when that call goes out, you know that it's not for a fire to be put out. You know that's for medics or paramedics to arrive.
Yes.
I want to ask you about checking a pulse. You never heard any of the two sergeants give instructions to check for a pulse?
No, sir.
But you did hear Mr. McClain communicating with the officers. I'm going over the
It
subject. of the
has.
Pulse.
I
Understood.
think 6.
And I'm going to wrap that up because I'm talking about just what regarding the questions of the pulse. So if I may just have one more question on that.
Go ahead.
Thank you. With Mr. McClain being able to communicate and respond to the officers, you didn't feel the need to check for a pulse.
Correct.
Now, from the area that we saw Mr. Woodyard come back from, can you give us a sense of how far the cars were backed up? Are there more cars back, further back?
I don't understand the
Sure.
question.
Are all the cars closely packed next to Mr. McClain?
No.
You have been shown video of Mr. Woodyard leaving with Sergeant Nunez. Do you remember that? Oh,
That
I
was his
apologize.
testimony.
Let me
Sustained.
clarify. Let's go back to when Mr. Wood, we can run it from here. Go ahead and run the body cam. This is
Front of there.
Tell them to come in off.
Nobody's coming off.
Thanks. You can bend his knees a little bit. So he can balance himself.
Is that his cell phone over there?
He's kicking around.
out there. Do you hear indications that Mr. McClain is still moving at that time?
That he's still moving?
Yeah, that he's kicking around a little bit.
I mean, by the noise he made, it sounds like he's still moving.
Did you hear anyone make comments that he's still kicking around a bit?
I wasn't listening for that, sir.
My apologies. I should have alerted you to that. Can we back it up? All right.
You can bend his knees a little bit. So he can balance himself.
Is that his cell phone over there?
He's kicking around.
Hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So point being, Mr. Woodyard is back here now. You heard someone saying that, or I guess, is Mr. Woodyard back here by this point?
Sir, I was trying to listen for the statement that you was
Fair
asking
enough.
for. I'm not paying attention to Mr. Woodyard.
You're okay. If we could back it up and you can tell me whether Mr. Woodyard came back. I'm trying to establish when Mr. Woodyard came back.
All right, well, we need to wrap it up because we have gone over it several times.
Okay. What I'm going to be asking you is, we're going to run through this. I'm going to ask you whether Mr. Woodyard is back and whether there's indications from another officer that Mr. McClain is moving. And then I'm also going to ask you whether you hear,
And whether there's indications that he's moving or not is something the jury can determine if he's not testifying based upon his memory, but rather the video.
and whether you remember or whether you hear Mr. McClain ever complain of breathing during this period of time, okay? And then I'm going to also ask you, these are all just things to alert you to, whether you see Mr. Woodyard walk off.
All right, the objection is noted, but we do need to move on because we have been over this territory a number of times.
Thank you, Judge. And this will be the last time I play this. Go ahead.
You can bend his knees a little bit. So he can balance himself.
Is that his cell phone over there?
He's kicking around.
So, with a red case? Y'all missing your cell phone or
I'm
anything?
not missing mine. You're missing yours. You're missing the car, right? What's that? Your cell phone is in the car? I think so. Is it an iPhone?
Is with a red case? Okay.
We need to know. Good, bro.
Okay. Did you hear any complaints of breathing?
No, sir.
And again, the jury can determine that.
Sure. These two individuals here walking away, do you see them walking towards 225?
Yes.
Okay. You have 1 second, sir, and Judge. Thank you for your patience. Those are all my questions.
Redirect.
Officer Denson, you testified on cross-examination that an officer can disregard a sergeant for safety reasons. Could you elaborate on that?
If a sergeant gives orders or a command officer, in general gives an order that the officer feels as though it will put the officer or somebody else in safety, they can disregard it, but they have to articulate why.
So an individual officer can still determine what's safe at a scene.
Yes,
You also testified that Mr. McClain was not in the full recovery position from your observation. Did I understand that correctly?
correct.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
May the witness be excused. All right, you may step down. You're excused.
Thank you, sir.
Folks on the jury, we're going to take our halftime break for the morning. If you could be back in 15 minutes, by that clock, it's 20 minutes till 11. So I'd like to have you back in the courtroom at roughly 5 minutes till 11. Don't form or express any opinions or discuss the case. Do no independent research. Avoid any press coverage. We'll see you in a few minutes. All right, the jurors have stepped out. Be back in 15 minutes, please.
Yes.
Do it. Permanent board. Get started with Word. Like an hour. Awesome.
Vegan website, it's really good, it's really does some big stuff.
But nothing about
She has this vegan. It's done in one bowl, super easy, pick it with your kids.
You go to home, it's closed, it's all just replicating hard. Baby grounds.
I'll have that too, I do it all. You're in the morning bit. No, I think it's such a. Not need dishes.
Well, absolutely. I'm just saying. What roads?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
State of Colorado v. Nathan Woodyard. Next witness for the people.
Next witness is Madison Freeman.
All right, if you'll step over here to my right, I'll swear you in. Raise your right hand, please. Solemnly swear or affirm testimony that you're about to give truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
All right, if you'll please be seated, and once you're seated, if you'll tell us your first and last name and spell your last name for the record.
Yep, it's Madison Freeman. First name spelled Madison, last name Freeman.
Your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Freeman. Can you please explain to the jury how you knew Elijah McClain?
Elijah and I worked together from 2017 to approximately 2019.
Were you working together and did you know him at the time that he was killed?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me a little bit about what your role at Massage Envy was and how that related to Mr. McClain's role?
Yes, I was a front desk sales associate. Elijah was a massage therapist.
Did you work together at the same location?
Yes,
Where was that at?
in Greenwood Village,
What was the business name?
a massage envy.
How often would you see Elijah McClain when you were at work?
Elijah and I worked Thursday through Sundays together.
Did you often work those same shifts during that whole year and a half or 2 years you knew him?
Yes, oftentimes Elijah and I would open together or close the massage studio together.
While working with him, did you learn anything about his exercise habits?
Elijah would have a 1 hour break during every single shift. During that time, he would run almost every single day, either to work or during his lunch break.
Do you know about how long he would run or how long he would run for?
I know that he took a bus from Aurora to a bus stop somewhere around Greenwood Village, so it's approximately, 30 minutes to an hour that he would run every single day.
Is being a massage therapist a physically demanding job too?
Yes, yeah, on your feet 10 hours a day. We would work 10-hour shifts together.
Did Elijah McClain wear any sort of specific shoes for his running?
Yep, Elijah wore toe shoes.
Those ones that have the little individual slot for each of your toes?
That's correct.
Did you know him to have any health problems that bothered him?
Elijah was a vegan. I mean, I almost only ever saw the guy eat avocado rolls every day, and he constantly complained about how cold he was. He would bundle up every day coming to work.
Did that interfere with his ability to exercise regularly or otherwise be an active person?
No,
Now, before testifying related to these cases, did you have a chance to review some photos of Elijah McClain from the weeks before he was killed?
yes,
Can we please show just the witness exhibits 4 and 3? Ms. Freeman, do you recognize those photos?
yeah, I took those photos about 2 weeks before his death.
Were those photos, are these screenshots taken from a video that you took of him?
They are, yep.
Oh, where's that video from?
We were having a potluck at our work. We had a monthly potluck, and I just wanted to capture his reaction.
Do these photos fair and accurately depict how, go ahead and take your time, ma'am, I'm sorry. Do they fairly and accurately depict how Elijah looked a couple weeks before he died?
Yep, just a happy guy.
Do they fairly and accurately reflect his size, his stature?
Yep, I'm a 5'2" person. He was maybe an inch, 2 inches taller than me.
And Your Honor, I'd move for admission of Peoples 3 and 4.
Objection or voir dire. All right, exhibits 3 and 4 will be admitted.
May we publish to the jury, please? On the right, what was Mr. McClain doing when that screenshot was taken?
Response.
It's just foundational to establish what's depicted in the photos.
All right, brief.
What's he doing in the right photo?
He was reacting to the luau potluck that we had set up.
And what's he doing in the photo on the left?
He was just doing a little dance. Oh, the left, he was dancing.
And how long was it before Elijah McClain was killed that you took these photos?
I mean, that was taken the month that he died.
Those are all the questions I have for you, Ms. Freeman. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cross-examination.
We don't have any questions.
All right. Next witness for the people.
Thank you, Your Honor. Alicia Ward.
Or if you'll step on over to my right, I'll swear you in. Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth. All right, if you please be seated.
Your Honor.
That's fine, and once you're seated, if you'll tell us your name and spell your last name.
Yes, my name is Alicia Ward. My last name is Ward.
Your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Officer Ward.
Morning.
Can you please tell the jury what you do for a living?
Yes, I'm a police officer with the city of Aurora.
How long have you been an officer with Aurora?
About 5.5 years now.
I'd like to ask you about some of the events from August 24th of 2019. Were you on duty that night?
Yes,
What was your role?
I was on patrol at that time.
The three officers that initially encountered Mr. McClain, Randy Redema, Jason Rosenblatt, and Nathan Woodyard. Did you work regularly with any of them?
Not regularly. I believe Rodema and Rosenblatt were swing shift officers and I was working Graves at the time. I believe Officer Woodyard was Graves, but just a different team. So some overlapping days, some not.
Okay. Were you familiar with all three of them?
I at least knew their faces. I knew Officer Woodyard a little better than the other two.
Sure. Now, when you responded to the incident involving Mr. McClain, what area was that in?
It's around basically Billings, around 1700 north block of Billings.
A few blocks north of Colfax there.
Yes,
What county is that in?
that's Adams County.
Can you just describe to the jury briefly what you remember seeing when you walked up to the scene?
Yes, when I first got on scene, I walked up, I saw a few officers around who I now know to be Mr. McClain. I did not know that at the time. There was Sergeant Leonard was there, and I don't recall if there was any other officers standing up nearby. I think maybe one or two others. I didn't pay too much attention when I first got there because I just pretty quickly then turned back around and went to call the reporting party since Sergeant Leonard asked me to.
So when you first arrived, was the individual you now know to be Mr. McClain restrained on the ground?
Yes, I believe he was handcuffed already when I got there. Like I said, I didn't pay much attention when I first went up, but I believe so.
We'll circle back to that and show you some of the videos so we can talk a little bit about the details. But I also want to talk about one of your other roles in the case. Did you collect some evidence after Mr. McClain left in the ambulance?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what items of evidence you gathered?
Yeah, so I gathered a black ski mask, kind of the like full face style with the holes for the eyes and the mouth. And then some personal items. So I believe there were like earbuds and then I can't recall exactly what else, but a few other personal items. And then later, much later, I collected like a piece of plastic that I believe came from a body camera.
Those earbuds and the mask, Did you ultimately book those into evidence?
Yes, I believe so.
Now, I'd like to talk first about the mask a little bit. And could we please play for Officer Ward Exhibit 189, her body worn camera? Is that the mask you're retrieving?
Yes.
Looks like you're placing it into a brown evidence bag.
Yes.
Were those the earbuds you were talking about that you retrieved?
Yes.
Go ahead and keep playing. Could we now play Exhibit 190, another one of Officer Ward's body cameras, please? Stop it. Now, that paper bag, is there a reason that you put the mask into a paper bag instead of a plastic bag?
If I recall correctly, I believe I thought the mask was going into evidence, but I thought the other items were going to be like personal property. So those plastic bags is normally what we'd put in personal property and when we take people to jail.
Okay, could we rewind about 3 or 4 seconds? Unfortunately, the flashlight's not on the mask very much, but I'd like to draw your attention to looking at the mask, please. Let's play. Go ahead and stop. Do you remember, or did you notice on the video some red material on the inside of the mask?
Yes, I recall some like reddish or maybe orangish, something that looked to me like throw up.
Okay. And was that present when you booked the mask or when you put the mask into that paper bag?
Yes.
Did that then get placed into evidence?
Yes.
Could you take a look behind you, Officer Ward? There's a box with Exhibit 2 in it, which should be the mask.
I can open it.
Yeah, it's in a plastic box, so you can't mess it up. Does that appear to be the same mask?
It looks like it.
If you tilt it a little bit forward, can you see that same reddish material inside of it?
It looks like what I assume is that years later.
Okay. Suffice to say, this is dried out in the intervening 4 years.
It looks like it, yes. Yeah.
Does it otherwise appear to be the same mask?
I think so, yes.
You can go ahead and put that down. Thank you. I'd like to talk about the other body camera footage from arriving at the scene. Did you turn your body camera on before approaching the scene where you ultimately encountered Mr. McClain and the other officers?
So we have, our body cameras have a 30-second buffer, so when you turn it on, it will show you 30 seconds prior without any noise. If I recall correctly, I turned it on as I was walking up, so it would have caught me driving up with no sound, and then the sound turns on as I came up.
All right. Well, I'd like to ask you some questions about that. Let's start with Exhibit 31 from the beginning. And for the record, Exhibit 31 is, oh, excuse me, sorry, Exhibit 186 is Miss Ward's body worn camera. Is this that silent portion you were talking about?
Yes.
All right, what do you guys need?
Suspicious, can you, click like?
Could we rewind just a couple seconds there to 26 seconds? Yeah. So as you're walking up here, Officer Ward, I'd like to try and identify who these folks are. So we'll just play it through a couple seconds here so we can identify the three individuals kind of kneeling by Mr. McClain and the two standing if it's possible. Go ahead and play.
What do you guys need?
Suspicious.
Go ahead and stop.
Well, I could not see the furthest one because it looks like Officer Rodima is this center. Okay, so the top right, I believe that is Sergeant Leonard. The one below him, I'm actually not positive. I think that's Officer Rosenblatt, but I'm not positive. I'd have to see like a different angle to be able to tell for sure. I believe the one to that person's left is Officer Rodima. The one standing on the far left, I believe, is Officer Root.
Okay. And then there's a third individual back here who's a little bit hard to see because Mr. Rodima is sort of obstructing the view.
Yes, I believe so. I couldn't tell you for sure who that is.
Okay. Do you remember from either your review of the camera or from that night whether that was Mr. Woodyard?
I believe it is. I just, from this video, I can't say for certain, but I believe so.
Understandable. So that third individual who you're not totally sure of, he's the person who is closest to Mr. McClain's head, is that right?
I believe so.
Let's go ahead and play until 31 seconds.
What do you guys need?
Suspicious, can you?
Could we do that again? The sound cut out.
Suspicious, can you, click my camera over there?
Who is that asked you to find his camera?
That was Officer Rodima.
Let's go ahead and play.
Okay, would you guys mind contacting the story was on the front end?
Okay.
Great, all right?
Sure.
So what are you doing here?
Like as the video cuts out, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, at this point in time, what's going on?
So I went back to my patrol car to call the reporting party, the person that called this in.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about the individual who was restrained that you later learned to be Elijah McClain. Was he handcuffed when you showed up?
I believe so. Like I said, I didn't pay much attention when I first got there, so I believe so. I understood that to be the case.
Were any of the firefighters or EMTs on the scene at this point in time?
I don't believe so. Again, I'm not positive, but I believe they were not when I very first arrived. But after I called the RP, I think they had since arrived at that point.
Okay. At this early stage, when you walked up, did you see anybody checking Mr. McClain's pulse?
I didn't notice anything. Like I said, I didn't pay much attention.
Did you notice if anyone was checking his breathing?
Not that I noticed or saw.
Did you hear anyone informing Sergeant Leonard that Mr. McClain had claimed he can't breathe a number of times?
I don't recall hearing that.
Did you hear anybody informing Sergeant Leonard about any medical issues that Mr. McClain was having?
I don't recall. Like I said, I didn't at that first encounter. I barely paid attention at all to what was going on over there.
Okay. What was everybody talking about when you walked up?
I'm not even sure. I'd have to listen to the camera again. I could try to.
Sure,
I
let's
could
start
tell you
at
after that, but
start at 19 seconds.
All right, what do you guys need?
Suspicious, can you, click my camera over there? Okay, would you guys contacting the story was on the front end?
Okay.
Great, all right?
Sure.
Does that refresh your memory that they were talking about how they thought Mr. McClain was suspicious?
I heard Sergeant Leonard say the word suspicious. I honestly don't recall or couldn't even tell from that video exactly what his statement was. I heard obviously Officer Rodima asked me for the camera and Sergeant Leonard say something, but I couldn't decipher exactly what that conversation was.
Was it your understanding that that was the reason they wanted you to call the initial 911 caller, was to find out what the suspicious activity was?
That it was my understanding Sergeant Leonard wanted me to get more information from the caller. Yes.
Okay, so their concern is finding out why initially they got called to the scene, not what's happening here?
Sustained.
Fair. So what did you do after this?
So after this point, that is when I went to call the reporting party by my car or in my car.
After you finished the call with the reporting party, did you then go back to the scene where Mr. McClain and the officers were at?
Yes.
Let's play exhibit 187, starting at 22 hours, 52 minutes, and 49 seconds. And I'd like to talk first about who some of the folks that we see in this are.
Just contact her and get, why we're here.
So-
Do you know that individual?
That's Officer Dunson.
Go ahead.
all he said is the same thing that's in the notes, that he saw a guy, in a
So,
mask.
He was put into aquatic, he did lose consciousness, he's, right now. You're gonna have to have transport. I think we're okay for here, I appreciate it, thanks.
So he was just walking around. He said he didn't threaten him or anything. He was wearing a mask.
I know that, yeah.
And that he was like throwing his hands up, but he said he didn't feel threatened or anything. He just thought it was weird.
Okay.
I've still got him on the phone if you want to ask him anything
No,
else.
I
That was
just want
about
to
it.
get that front end, the best he could explain what was going on and why we got called.
Okay.
These three individuals that we see in this scene here, are these police officers?
Those two at least that I can see look like firefighters, but
Are they the guys who have the yellow stripes on their pants?
yes, I suppose, and the suspenders.
Okay, keep playing.
And if there was anything criminal, that doesn't look like
It doesn't sound like it. I'll get some more details from
Okay,
him.
I appreciate it.
Now, when the firefighters are arriving on the scene here, did you hear anybody telling the firefighters about Mr. McClain's breathing problems?
I don't recall, no, I don't recall hearing anything like that at that time.
And are you and Sergeant Leonard instead discussing whether or what the grounds for the initial 911 call were?
I mean, yeah, I went back to tell Sergeant Leonard an overview of what the caller told me, since he was the one that asked me to call.
Okay, let's keep playing.
No, the RP walked up to me, but I wasn't able to yet.
Are you going back to make some more communications here?
I think so. I actually don't recall if I think I just ended the call there. I'm not sure if I conversed with him much longer.
Let's go to exhibit 188, the next of your body worn cameras, starting at 22:57:27. Sorry. So is this after you come back to the scene,
Yes.
3 or 4 minutes after what we just viewed?
Yes, that's what it looks like.
Go ahead and play.
Right in his pew.
Oh, thank you.
Here, come this way with it. Come this way. There we go.
Now, you heard something about the puke. Did you notice some vomit there near Mr. McClain?
Yes, obviously. I did not notice at first, but I believe it was Officer Rodima pointed it out that like nearby there was a spot of what looked like throw up on the grass.
Is that similar to the substance that you saw inside the mask later?
It looked similar. Yeah.
Now, it sounds like Officer Redeem is giving you some instructions here. What's going on?
Yes, I believe, I mean, I don't know exactly, obviously, his thought process, but originally I kind of was in front of where Mr. McClain was laying. And again, he pointed out, Officer Redima pointed out that throw up because I was trying to assist. I wasn't sure if they needed something right there, so I saw like additional movement of Mr. McClain. And then Officer Redema had me come back around basically to the same side of Mr. McClain as the other officers.
So did you move around to behind Mr. McClain's head?
Yes, I believe when I first went behind, I initially like briefly held his arm, and then soon after I transitioned closer to his head, or I don't recall if I switched positions or not, but I was originally touching his upper arm and then went close to his head.
Okay. And so while you're behind Mr. McClain's head, who's immediately to your right?
That was Officer Rodema, I believe.
And is Officer Green to his right by Mr. McClain's feet?
I believe at that point he was. I'd have to see the video to tell you for sure. I believe so.
Let's continue playing.
What are you trying to get?
Just put his arm. You can breathe. You can breathe. You can breathe. Okay. I just have his arm right behind his back. Don't move your feet. No, don't do that. So if you take his foot and do it outwards, yeah, that will pressure on his ankle. He almost did a pusher with all three of us on his back.
You want to give that before we.
Yeah, so once he gets back, I'm gonna hit him in the right shoulder.
You want shoulder or ass? Ass is right here, man.
Okay. We'll see if that works, and then there it goes. We'll close his head.
This period here, before the ketamine is injected into Mr. McClain, how would you describe Mr. McClain's movements?
So I saw like him, I guess, randomly like clenching muscles and moving around a lot. I wasn't sure like what exactly he was doing, if he was trying to assault anybody or if I didn't know what he was doing, but I would say clenching muscles in different spots.
Officer Ward, are you just saying what we just saw you thought might be Elijah McClain trying to assault someone?
I'm not sure is what I'm saying. I know when I initially came up, I was worried he might be trying to kick somebody or something, like, I don't know. So I went up. That's the only reason I went up, to try to assist.
I'm talking about what we just watched. What about that gives you any indication that he is trying to assault someone?
His movements, so like the muscle movements. I'm not saying I know exactly what he was doing, but that is indicative of the possibility that he could be trying to assault somebody. People still do that when they're handcuffed sometimes.
So what you just described as random clenching of his muscles, you think that that's a sign he's trying to assault someone?
I'm saying it could be.
It could be. Okay. What did you hear him doing there?
I heard like groans. I couldn't, I guess, categorize it better than that. Some noises, groans.
Okay. He's not cursing out the officers.
No, I didn't hear that.
When he's clenching, that's like his muscles are spasming.
I'm not sure if it's spasming or if he's clenching them himself. I'm not sure.
Okay. He's not punching anybody here.
I didn't see him punch anybody there.
He's not biting anybody.
Not that I saw, no.
His movement, he was actually forward, right?
I think so. If you're talking about around this time, like near the time that I had his arm, I do believe he went forward at one point.
And that's away from you and the other officers who are on his back.
Sustain.
That forward or away from where you and the officers on his back are?
Forward from where we were.
If he's trying to assault you, how can he do that by moving forward?
Objection, speculation.
I'll allow it.
Well, if he moved forward, he would be able to kick easier, I would say, but.
Now, this position here where Mr. McClain has sort of moved forward, and we heard Mr. Redeema say something along the lines of, you want shoulder or ass. Is it sometime shortly after this that Mr. McClain is injected with the ketamine?
I believe it was shortly after that he was injected, I did not know at the time what he was injected with. I've obviously since learned that, but I had no idea what he was injected with. But I do believe he got injected with something around that time.
Okay, let's continue playing here.
Got it?
Rewind 5 seconds. It seems like every time we're starting the playing, it's cutting out sound for a second or two.
Got it? And you guys back way? Yeah. I'm kicking you, man. Right here is our Grab your knuckles right there. You don't have to put pressure until we move. You got 500 ketamine.
Go back just 2 seconds. What instructions did you just receive from Mr. Redeema?
So Officer Redeema told me to put my knuckles around the spot there, like underneath, essentially like in front of a little bit underneath the ear here on like a pressure point, and said to, I forget the exact verbiage he just used, but essentially said something like drive if he fights or something like that, or like put pressure if he fights, something along those lines.
Okay. I want to break each of those things down a little bit. What, you said this is a pressure point?
I don't have that much knowledge about it, but yeah, there's essentially, from my understanding, there's a point here kind of like in front of the ear where if you press hard and quickly, it can kind of like take somebody's attention away quickly, so.
Okay, so the idea is if you put pressure there, it causes a lot of pain to the person?
It may, yeah, it's to take attention away quickly, if needed, if somebody is like fighting or resisting or doing something that we would need attention to be drawn away so that we could do something else, like whether you do that before they're handcuffed and then you use that time, that distraction to get them handcuffed or something like that.
Okay. And is it your understanding that the distraction or the attention that you're taking away is the serious pain that that would cause the person?
Yes.
Did you end up actually driving your knuckles in there and causing Mr. McClain pain?
No, I just left my hand there. I never felt the need to.
Okay, why not?
During the time I was there, I just didn't feel like it was necessary. I didn't feel like anybody was in danger enough at that point that it would be beneficial or that it was needed.
Because he wasn't assaulting anybody.
At that time, I don't think so, no.
So the timestamp here is 59 minutes and 31 seconds is when you place your knuckles in position there. Is that about fair?
Looks like it. The writing's kind of blurred out with the red, but.
Once we hit play again here in a second, if I'm wrong about that, please just let me know. Go ahead and play. Sorry, can we back up to like 59:25? We keep getting this sound issue.
Take your hands, grab your knuckles right there. You don't have to put pressure until we move. Got 500 ketamine. Rubbing in his ear if he fights, all right?
Now, this period here, Mr. Redeema gives you another instruction. What was that?
Yeah, it sounded like to me two similar instructions, but different wording of like drive your knuckle right there if he fights or something like that. Drive your knuckle near his ear if he fights, something along those lines.
Okay. Now, you can hear one of the paramedics say, that they're going to give him the ketamine. Did you hear that?
I did not.
Let's rewind to 35 seconds. Go ahead and play.
Just rub it right in his ear if he fights,
So we
right?
have to rewind to about 27 seconds so that our sound playing issue doesn't screw it up.
Don't get right there, you don't have to put pressure until he moves. 500 ketamine.
Did you hear that? 500 of ketamine?
That's what it sounded like to me, yes.
And from where you're at on the ground, where's the paramedic in relationship to you?
I'm not positive at this exact time, but I know soon after that, or if not right now, I'm not sure. They were sort of surrounding us in front of Mr. McClain, sort of in a like semicircle type thing.
Okay. During this time period right before the ketamine is administered, do you remember Mr. Woodyard being right behind you?
I don't.
Do you remember him asking Mr. Rosenblatt to come with him and talk to him?
I don't recall that.
Let's play for the witness exhibit 178, starting at 22:57:49.
Gonna get.
You can't move.
And then
Sure he can breathe. Keep it to the side.
He can breathe.
Okay, all right.
I just have his arm
I
behind his
understand, I
back.
understand. Don't move your feet. No, don't do that.
So
Now, for your reference, Officer Ward, this is Officer Rosenblatt's camera. Is that you sort of down here that we can barely see the head of?
I believe so. That's about the position I was in, so I would assume so, but I can't tell from that video.
Okay. And that conversation about driving the knuckles that we just heard it here too?
I did not hear it in this video. I was listening to the other talking, sorry, but if you played it again, I could tell you.
Let's go ahead and go back to 49. 57:49, yeah. Or 40, so we don't mess up the sound.
that was the only position I had.
Dude. There we go.
Were you trying to get?
Put his arm down here. I could rub my knee right in his tricep. And you can't move.
And then
Sure he can breathe. Keep it to the side.
he can breathe.
Okay, all right.
I just have his arm
I
behind his
understand, I
back.
understand. Don't move your feet. No, don't do that. So if you take his.
Good, bro.
foot outwards, yeah.
And that's Officer Woodyard, right?
Yes.
Let's go back to your camera, starting at 59 minutes and 57 seconds. Start at 55 since it's messing up the sound. What? Yeah, 188, 59. Let's start at 52.
If you guys are okay with the look up with the right arm down to the left, then I can straighten it. Right. Hey, when you're, Rosie, here in a minute, once this medicine kicks in, we're gonna uncuff and put him on the bed. And then we're gonna restrain him.
Now, when we look at Mr. McClain's position here, I would like to draw your attention to his right shoulder. It's basically down on the grass, isn't it?
It looks pretty close to the grass. I can't say if it's touching or not, but yeah, it looks mostly over at least.
Okay. And this position that Mr. McClain is in here, basically the same position he's in for the next few minutes.
I believe he's in about that position for, I don't recall exactly how long before they move him onto the pram. I'd have to watch it to tell you exactly.
And we'll do that to make sure that we're getting this right in just a second here. But I want to clarify this position here. The recovery position is when somebody's shoulder is down on the ground and the other one is up in the air, right?
Typically, yeah, it should be on essentially the side of a person's head, so his head is facing away, which is how the recovery position should be. Typically, it'd be one shoulder on the ground and then one up higher. And then,
But
oh, sorry.
Here, his right shoulder is down right next to the grass, not up in the air.
Objection, Your Honor, leading and testifying.
Sustained.
Describe the position of his right shoulder.
It looks mostly forward. Like I said before, I can't say exactly if it's touching the grass or not, but obviously his left shoulder is his right shoulder. I couldn't tell you exactly, but it looks more forward, and then his face is pointing away.
And I mean, Officer Ward, you literally have your hands on him. Can you tell this jury what position his shoulder was in at that point in time?
I mean, like I said, it looks mostly forward. I don't know how else to describe it, I guess.
I mean, is it in the grass? Is it a few inches off?
Well, like I said, I couldn't tell you from this video, and I don't recall. It looks to me like it's probably not touching, but like it's over. I'm not positive.
Okay. Is his shoulder up in the air like it's supposed to be in the recovery position?
It's not like perfectly above the other shoulder, if that's what you're asking. No.
I'm not asking if it's perfectly above.
Yeah, it looks more, I guess, to me, more toppled over. Like I said, I just don't want to say something that's wrong if I don't know. I don't know if it's touching the grass or not. It looks like it's kind of like partially over like that, I guess. One shoulder touching the other one partially over.
Okay. You just described it as he's toppled over onto his stomach. Is that fair?
I don't know if his stomach is touching the ground or not. Like I said, his head is still turned away, so I don't know.
Officer Ward, is he toppled over onto his stomach?
I don't know. I can just tell you, I think he's at least partially toppled over. I'm not positive what his stomach looks like. I wasn't looking at it.
Officer Ward, you were in this courtroom 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
You sat in that exact chair.
Yes.
And you swore to tell the truth.
Yes.
Please show the witness her statement from 2023, page 121. Lines 14 through 16. Officer Ward, you were asked under oath. I hear he's fully toppled over onto his stomach, isn't he? And you responded, he does look toppled over. Yes, I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the position we just saw in the video, is Mr. McClain in the recovery position?
I don't think fully.
What's up with that word qualifying fully? Is he in the recovery position?
Well, I'm just trying not to give like an answer that I can't say for sure, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not sure if that was from this part of questioning last time or not, or if that was when you showed me somebody else's body camera in a different view. I'm just trying to like not say something that I don't have the knowledge to say, I guess, or like I don't want to draw conclusions. You're right that that's like what you just read is obviously you read it correctly. I'm just trying not to contradict myself or like word it incorrectly, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to contradict yourself because you know what you said before.
Sustained.
Why are you hesitating about answering this question? Is he in the recovery position?
Oh,
I'm not sure. I guess I really don't, I don't know how to answer that. I'm just trying to like not mislead. Like I would say the like typical recovery position would be the one shoulder up. And I think probably I would say if a shoulder's over, That's not the typical recovery position. So I'm not sure why I'm being hesitant. I'm just trying to not describe anything incorrectly.
I appreciate that. It's part of the reason that you're hesitating.
Sustain. Ask questions.
Is your hesitation related to your relationship with the defendant?
No,
It's having no effect on you that you work with him?
well, I wouldn't say it's having no effect on me, but not related to that answer.
So is Mr. McClain being held in the recovery position here?
Sustain.
So is your testimony a moment ago that maybe partially he's not in the recovery position? Is that fair?
Yes.
Now you gave another sworn statement a few weeks ago. Is that fair?
Yes.
And that statement you were under oath. Sorry, you have to answer audibly.
Yes.
And you told the jury there that you were going to tell them the whole truth.
Yes.
Can you please show the witness her 2023 testimony, page 121, lines 2 through 7.
Mayor, I'm just going to object based on improper impeachment and just ask before the witness is confronted with the statement that she is given the opportunity, she first presented with the statement.
I think that's what we're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to ask her about the statement and make sure it's correct. Now, under oath a few weeks ago, Officer Ward, when I asked you, has Mr. McClain moved at all from about 2 minutes ago? You responded, he looks like he's in about the same position. And I said, you mean not in the recovery position? And you said, correct. I read that correctly, didn't I?
Yes.
Let's go back to 188. And resume playing, please.
And then we're gonna. Are you okay? You guys have your extra ball. My back couch right here, dude. Sorry, I'm gonna say just the rest of that. Your extra large. I just. Walking down the street. Still by the speaker. I did it. Good. Yeah, you still right. Ready? We'll go ahead and, take a look. Yeah, he will be. I'm sure he will be, man. Okay. Yeah. All right. How's he? He seems a little. Yep. Okay. Go ahead and get him on his side. We'll just unstep him. Let's get him on the gurney first. Okay. If we can.
Now, a few seconds ago, did you hear Mr. Redeema say something to Mr. Woodyard?
I think I heard Officer Redeema say something about let's get him on the gurney first, if that's what you're talking about. I'm not sure who he was talking to.
Okay, let's back up to 0 minutes and 35 seconds. Now, at this point in time, I know your camera is looking down, but were you able to see Mr. Woodyard standing over by the gurney at this time?
I don't recall where Mr. Woodyard was at the time.
He was visible to you somewhere?
I just recall in one of the earlier videos you showed me that I did see him on that one, but I don't recall where he was at this exact time right here.
Let's play this section and focus on Mr. Edema's conversation with Mr. Woodyard, please.
So. I just. So I. I'm excited. Yeah, you still ready? Go ahead and, yeah.
Sorry, I think I played the wrong section for you there. I think we need to go back, but I'll show you the other angle instead to help answer your question. Could we play exhibit 184, Officer Leonard's body worn camera, starting at 22:59:04?
Yep. Good.
So Dima's camera got broken in the middle of all that.
Do we know where?
We already talked to the RP. We got the RP. What's that? That I don't. Did you lose your camera?
Who's this individual?
That looks like Officer Woodyard.
Did you just hear the paramedics making their statements about in a minute or two here?
I'm sorry about.
In a minute or two here?
No, sorry, I was listening to Sergeant Leonard.
Sorry. I'd like to draw your attention now to the conversation back and forth between Mr. Woodyard and Redema. Go ahead and play.
Oh, we did somewhere down here? Okay.
It's right there.
Okay.
All right. I think
Rosie,
Yeah.
here in a minute, once this medicine kicks in, we're gonna uncuff and put him on the bed,
Okay,
and then we're gonna restrain him, stop coming to the bed.
all right, let me grab some glove.
Does that refresh your recollection as to whether Mr. Woodyard was standing over by the gurney?
Yes, it looks like he was near the gurney.
That conversation, does Mr. Redema specifically address Mr. Woodyard?
Yes, I believe he did.
Does he say, "Hey, Woodyard"?
Yes, and I believe, I'd have to listen to it again, sorry, but I believe he said Woodyard and,
Council approach.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, Officer Ward, do you remember hearing Mr. Redema talk about that they were going to, once the medicine kicks in, uncuff and put Mr. McClain on the bed?
I do recall him saying something. Yes, saying that that's what they were gonna do.
Did you take that to mean that Mr. McClain would remain handcuffed after he'd gotten the ketamine?
I understood that to mean that they were gonna put him on the gurney and then uncuff him from there and put him in those soft restraints. So I believe that was after he received medication.
Sure. Did you understand it to mean that Mr. McClain would remain handcuffed until he went onto the gurney?
I believe so, yes.
Did you understand that to mean that he would remain restrained until he was put on the gurney?
Objection as to relevance and her understanding.
Response.
Well, Judge, she's the one who's on the scene and they're all communicating about what's happening. Their actions are all related to each other in terms of both what they're seeing and they're hearing and what they're doing.
That mischaracterization of evidence and the speaking response.
All right, well, how this particular witness understood a conversation that was apparently between others, the court will sustain the objection.
How were your actions being guided in this? Let me rephrase that a little bit. Were you doing what Mr. Redeema told you to do during this part of the encounter?
Yes.
Was one of the things that you were doing assisting with this minute or two before ketamine kicked in and he was moved to the gurney?
Yes, so I like remained in that position that we discussed earlier and that we saw earlier, and then once he was moved to the pram, I just provided light. I didn't assist with that part.
Okay. That same position where his shoulders down near the ground?
Yes. Or that's when yes, when I was near his head and had my hand close to here, yes. And then after that is when he got moved to the pram.
So this instruction from Mr. Redeema to leave Mr. McClain down there until they move him to the gurney, is that what happened?
Yes.
That same instruction that Mr. Woodyard just agreed with?
Objection. The court.
Sustain.
Did you hear whether Mr. Woodyard or not agreed with that instruction?
I don't recall.
Okay. After Mr. Redeema gave that instruction, do you recall whether Mr. Woodyard started putting on his gloves to assist?
I don't recall. Sorry, I'd have to watch the video again to tell you if that is what happened.
Okay, well, pay attention to the right side of the screen here and let's play 5 more seconds.
Now, yep.
Again, I'm not going to have this witness testifying what's on the video, but from her memory.
Okay. Does that refresh your recollection as to whether or not Mr. Woodyard put on gloves to assist?
I mean, I saw it in the video. I would say I don't recall it if that's the concern.
That's fair. Let's switch back to the last section of your video, starting at 23:00:52.
Yeah. Hey, good point. Like, still by. I'm excited. Yeah, sure. Go ahead and, take the- yeah, I'm sure he will be, man. Yeah. Staff. All right. How's he? You seem a little. Yep. Okay. Go ahead and get him on this side. Hold your son.
Let's get him on the gurney first.
Okay.
If we can.
What's happening to Mr. McClain here?
So it looks like I had just stood up and he's about to be moved to the pram.
During the time period that we marked before, from, make sure I got the time right. 59 minutes and 31 seconds on your camera until here at 1 minute and 44 seconds after the hour. Is Mr. McClain in substantially the same position?
I recall that he generally was. I'd have to, like, I didn't note the time exactly, so it'd be based off the camera for me to remember the time that it started and ended.
Sure. Well, we just watched the last couple minutes here. Is he in the same position during those couple minutes?
It looks like generally the same position. Yeah.
And you were right behind him at his head?
Yes.
The position that he's in is not the recovery position.
Objection, leading.
Is he in the recovery position?
As I said before, I would say not the normal recovery position. Yeah, he was toppled over mostly, it looked like.
Not the normal recovery position, or just plain not the recovery position?
I guess I would say not the recovery position.
Thank you, Officer Ward. I don't have any further questions for you.
All right, we're going to take our lunch break. Folks, please recall, don't form or express any opinions or discuss the case even amongst yourselves. Don't do no independent research about issues in this case. Avoid any press coverage about this case or this kind of case. And I'd like to have you back in the jury assembly room at about 25 minutes after 1 o'clock. I'd like to have you back up here in the courtroom right around 3:30. 1:30. The jurors have stepped out. The witness may step down. You need to be back at 1:30. Yes.
Scheduling, just to give the court some additional information.
Okay, well, you can still step down, I guess.
Yes. Sorry, Officer Ward, didn't mean to keep you from not stepping down.
That's okay.
Your Honor, I believe that we have Miss Officer Ward, then we're going to have some of the Falk ambulance personnel. So Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Walker, we may get to the Aurora trainer, Grant Heineman, but I think we're going to take the afternoon and be done at 5. So looking at next week, I think that we have a full day Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'm just sort of circling back to taking Monday off, and if the court wants to consider that and tell the jury,
Yeah, actually, I was going to tell them before they left for lunch, but I forgot.
it's all right. I just wanted to remind the court that I really think that we can fill the days up if we can take Monday off.
Yeah, I was, before you stood up, I thought to myself, I should have told them before they left so they could make some weekend plans, but I'll tell them when they come back.
And Judge, in
Mr.
terms of
Howe?
scheduling, so I understand the people were courteous enough to give us a heads up in terms of who they intend on calling. I think with Grant Heineman, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the one that taught the carotid, correct? Okay. Before I guess there's any, I was hoping to be able to address the DOC issues before any slides of or training on the pedestrian contact. And so if that's not going to happen today, then I just wanted to figure out a time to do that in terms of scheduling purposes. Okay, thank you.
All right. And I suppose of that issue, and the court was, at least my interpretation was, we're not talking about reasonable suspicion. In this case, we're talking about force. So if it comes up, we'll address it. All right, the court will be in recess.